Good afternoon, everybody.
Good afternoon. Okay, commissioners, it is now 1 o'clock. We can go ahead and start our meeting.
Good afternoon. Thank you everyone for being here. Want to go over a few items on the special meeting. First of all, I want to call the meeting to order and a few housekeeping items to remind commissioners to keep their audio on mute unless they are speaking. Commissioners other than the chair can mute themselves. Staff will remain muted until needing to speak. All members of the public join the meeting. You will be participating as an attendee. Your microphone and camera will be muted. Only today's panels will be viewed during the meeting. If you're calling in from telephone and choose to speak during the public comments portion of today's agenda, for privacy concerns, the host will be renaming your viewable phone number to resident and the last 4 digits of your phone number. And as a reminder, the City of Santa Rosa is committed to creating a safe and inclusive environment free from disruption. Will not tolerate any hateful speech or actions and are well staffed to monitor that everyone is participating respectfully or they will be removed. If necessary, we will also immediately end the meeting. Clerk, can you explain how the public comments will be heard at today's meeting?
At each agenda item, the item is presented. The chair will ask for Housing Authority member comments and then open it up for public comment. The host in Zoom will be lowering all hands until public comment is open for the agenda item. Once the chair has called for public comment, the chair will announce for the public to raise their hand if they wish to speak on a specific agenda item. If you are calling in to listen to the meeting audibly, you can dial *9 to raise your hand. The host will then call on the public who have raised their hand. Public comment will be limited to 3 minutes and a timer will appear on the screen for the commission and public to see. Once all live public comments have been heard, the meeting host will read email public comments and play any voicemail public comments. If you provide a live public comment on an agenda item, but also submitted an email, your email public comment will not be read during the meeting.
Thank you. I'm going to ask the clerk to make a roll call.
Okay, let's go ahead and do the roll call. Commissioner Olson?
Here.
Commissioner Downey?
Here.
Commissioner Burke? Vice Chair Test?
Here.
And Chair Owen?
Here.
Okay, let the record reflect that all commissioners are present with the exception of Commissioner Burke.
As it relates to Commissioner Burke, wanted to add something here for comment abstention. Commissioner Burke stated that he will be abstaining from item 3.1 on today's agenda after consulting with the City Attorney's Office, Jeff Burke. The Housing Authority will not be attending the meeting given his sole action on the agenda. He'll also not be attending the meeting. The reason for the abstention is Commissioner Burke is on the board of directors for Vigil Light, who is selling that property to one of the applicants discussed in 3.1, that is Petaluma Ecumenical Properties, or PEP. And for that reason, it was determined, even though he has no financial incentive as a volunteer as the board, it was best viewed to have him abstain, and he presented that himself. So with that, I'll move to report items 1 and item 3.1.
Good afternoon, Chair Owen and members of the Housing Authority. Item 3.1 is a report, fiscal year 2021-2022, focused notice of funding availability, funding recommendations. Nicole Rathbun, Program Specialist, will be presenting.
Good afternoon, everybody. Nicole Rathbun here, Program Specialist with the City of Santa Rosa Housing Trust. So today in our presentation for you, we will go over the solicitation process for this current NOFA, the application scoring information, and some information about the top 2 projects that are recommended by the ad hoc committee for a funding award today. Next slide, please. Or do I, there we go. All right, so to go over the process, on March 22nd, 2021, the Housing Authority held a study session to review the current NOFA process and to receive input on a new scoring matrix used in rating the applications. Also at that meeting, Commissioners Test and Olson were appointed to an ad hoc review committee to go over the NOFA applications that came in. Staff drafted the NOFA and published it on March 29th, with applications due on April 16th of 2021. The ad hoc review committee meeting met on April 29th, and funding recommendations are presented today at the special meeting of the Housing Authority. Next slide, please. So this NOFA has approximately $8.9 million available. $5.8 million is from local funds. About $2.9 million is from community development block grant funds, and about $231,000 are from home CHODO funds. As noted in the NOFA that's attached to the staff report, this is a larger NOFA than we typically see in a year as a result of a return of a $4.2 million award earlier this year. Next slide, please. And also, as discussed in the March study session, these are the selection criteria that were identified for scoring of the inaugural point system for these applications. The readiness category has to do with planning approvals and entitlements. The affordability category has to do with how low the percentage of area median income households will be served by the project. Bedroom size is the number, or how large the units are. The special needs set-asides for populations as identified, we mirror what the state HCD department includes. And these are categories like homelessness, seniors, and farm workers. Leveraging is how big of a request is the project putting in as a percentage of the total development cost, with higher points being awarded to projects requesting a lowest percentage of funds as compared to the total development cost of the project. Project competitiveness, how does this project self-score against programs like the state MHP or SIDLAC tax credit applications, if applicable? Developer management experience, is the developer and the management team local, do they have completed projects that are leased up in the area? Services and amenities include not only how close the project site is to services in the community, what on-site services are being provided, and what amenities also on-site and in the community are available to the project. And other factors, as defined in this NOFA, are prior prior financial awards in the project, either from the housing authority, the red, the city, or the county, or if the site is located on city-owned land. Also, during the March study session, there was direction from the Housing Authority Board to make the scoring and criteria as equitable as possible for any of the projects that were applying for rehabilitation and acquisition, so as not to unintentionally bias the scoring towards new construction projects. So you'll see on the slide, there is an asterisk next to readiness and next to project competitiveness. After reviewing the applications, it was apparent that those two categories were not well aligned with rehabilitation or acquisition projects. So the rehabilitation and acquisition projects did not score in those two categories. Those points were omitted as to not negatively affect those projects. And those projects were scored out of a total of 80 points instead of 100. And as you'll see in the next few slides, the scores received by all projects are a percentage, because they're a percentage of total points possible, with the new construction projects scoring out of 100 for all of these categories that you see on the screen, and the rehabilitation and acquisition projects scoring out of 80, omitting the two noted readiness and project competitiveness categories. All right, next slide, please. So in response to this NOFA, we received 7 project applications requesting about $23 million in funds for 454 affordable units. Again, we had about $8.9 million available in the solicitation, and $231,000 of it was for home CHOTO funds. That is a restrictive funding source. We did not receive any applications for that funding source that would have aligned from a community housing development organization. So that brings the total amount of funding awards available down to about $8.7 million in funds. The projects on this table in front of you are listed in order of ranking based on their percentage of total points received. So as you can see, the top ranking project was the Bennett Valley Apartments at 702 Bennett Valley Road. That's in the southeast quadrant with 62 units, requesting $5.8 million in funds, and they received a score of 82% out of the total points possible. Now, this was a new construction project, or this is a new construction project, and so that 82 is 82 out of 100. Going down the list, we also received an application for Mahonia Glen, which is at 5173 Highway 12, requesting $2.9 million. That was for 99 units of new construction, scored 77% out of 100, and received a rank of 2. Next on the list is the Vigilite Apartments, which is a rehab and acquisition project in that category, requesting $1.5 million in funds. And so this project was ranked out of 80 possible points. They received a rank of 3 with a 76 percentage score. That equates to about 61 points out of 80 total possible for the project. Acme Apartments at 1885 Sebastopol Road for 77 units, requesting $1.75 million, received a 74%. Parkwood Apartments at 6899 Montecito received a score of 68% and a rank of 5, requesting $750,000 for 55 units. This was another acquisition and rehab category application. The Hearn Veterans Village at 2149 Hearn Avenue for 32 units, requesting about $3.6 million in funding, received a 62% and a rank of 6. And the Ponderosa Village project at 250 Roseland received a score of 55% and ranked 7th, requesting $7 million for 80 units. Next slide, please. Oh, there we go. So the ad hoc committee met on April 29th and reviewed all of the project information and the scoring criteria as used by staff. The ad hoc committee conferred with staff that the correct and most appropriate way to rank and score the projects was on a percentage of total possible points rather than the raw scores received. So that led to the top 2 projects being recommended today with Bennett Valley Apartments for $5.8 million with a score of 82%, and Mahonia Glen for $2.9 million and 77% was their score. Next slide, please. So to go into the Bennett Valley Apartments project information, you see an aerial of the site location today. That is the former site of the Bennett Valley Senior Center complex on Bennett Valley Road at the corner of Bennett Valley and Rutledge Avenue. Next slide, please. The developer of this project is Freebird Development Company, requesting $5.8 million. This is a new construction site. 62 units total would be built here. 51%, of the total units would be targeted for formerly homeless individuals and families, with the remainder of the units set aside for family units. Next slide, please. So here we have the affordability mix. It is proposed that 32 units would be at a deep level of affordability of 20% of AMI. 29 units would be at 50% of AMI, and there would be one unrestricted manager's unit. The unit mix equates to 19 studios, 19 one-bedrooms, 8 two-bedrooms, and 15 three-bedroom units. The status of the environmental reviews on their project include a completed NEPA review, and this project is exempt from CEQA. Next slide, please. So these are the categories that were evaluated for the Bennett Valley project and the scores received, and a brief note on the reason for the score. So if we start up at readiness, they received a 10 out of 10 because permits are ready to be issued following the award of funds. This project is fully entitled through SB 35, Senate Bill 35, which also makes it exempt from CEQA. Affordability, we've received an 18 out of 20 because 52% of the units are for households at 20% of AMI or less. This represents a very deep level of affordability. The bedroom size received a 5 out of 10 for 37% of the units at 2-bedroom or larger. The special needs set aside received an 8 out of 10 with 51% of the units set aside for formerly homeless persons or families. In leveraging, the project application received an 8 out of 10. The loan amount requested was 14% of the total development cost. Project competitiveness received a 10 out of 10. The self-scores for SIDLAC and the multifamily housing program through HCD were in the top 1% of the total possible points they could have earned. In developer and management experience, the project application received a 12 out of 15. There are 4 completed projects in the region, 5 projects in pre-development, and individually, the developer and management teams have significant development and management experience outside the region. The Freebird developer is a relatively new collaboration of several very experienced development teams that have come together, so that was taken into consideration as part of the review. As far as services and amenities, the project scored a 6 out of 10 with less than a mile to grocery and retail, transit stops within a 1/10 of a mile of the site, and there are significant on-site services and amenities provided to not only the permanent supportive housing units, but also to all of the residents on site. Other factors, the project received 5 out of 5 because the project is located on a city-owned site on the former Bennett Valley Senior Center complex. So all of these factors led to a total score of 82 out of 100, or 82% of total points possible. All right, next slide, please. Moving on to the Mahonia Glen project. This project ranked 2 out of the projects received. This is at the former site of the old Prickett's Nursery in Rincon Valley at the corner of Highway 12 and Calistoga Road. And as you can see, across the street from the St. Francis Shopping Center. Next slide, please. The developer for this project is Mid-Penn Housing, otherwise known as Mid-Peninsula The Farm. The loan amount requested is $2.9 million. This is also a new construction project with 99 units. with 5% of the units targeted for formerly homeless individuals and families, and 44% of the units targeted to farm workers and their families. Next slide, please. The affordability mix on this project proposes 26 units at 30% of AMI, 22 units at 50% of AMI, and 50 units at 60% of AMI, with 1 unrestricted manager's unit. The unit mix has 42 one-bedroom units, 29 two-bedroom units, and 27 three-bedroom units. As far as the environmental review, the NEPA review has not yet been completed, and the project is also exempt from CEQA through approvals on SB 35 as well. Next slide, please. All right, to go through the project application scoring details, here we go. The readiness, the project scored a 10 out of 10 because permits are ready to be issued following the award of funds. This is also due to a fully entitled project through SB 35. The affordability received a 9 out of 20 because less than 50% of the units are for households at or below 50% of AMI, and 51% of the households are at the 60% AMI level. The bedroom size score received a 6 out of 10 because 57% of the units are 2-bedroom or larger. The special needs set-asides received an 8 out of 10 with 5% of the units for formerly homeless persons and 44% for farm workers and their families. Leveraging received a 10 out of 10 with the Housing Authority loan amount requested only 4% of the total development cost for the project. Project competitiveness is a 10 out of 10 with self-scores for SIDLAC, for tax credits at 100% of the total possible points. For developer and management experience, the project received a 14 out of 15 because they do have significant experience in the region and several projects completed and leased up. As far as services and amenities, as I mentioned earlier, the project site location is across the street from the St. Francis Shopping Center in Rankin Valley. So that is 0.1 miles to grocery, or 0.1 miles or less, I should say, to grocery and retail. In transit, there's on-site services and amenities also available at this project. As far as other factors, the project didn't receive any points in that category because there are no prior Housing Authority, city, county, or RED awards on the site, and it is not located on a city-owned site. The project received a total of 77 out of 100 for 77%. And I should mention also that as an attachment to the item today is the NOFA, I believe it's attachment number 1. If you would like to take a look at the scoring, how the score categories are broken down even further, that was an attachment A to the NOFA that is included for your review today in that document as well. Next slide, please. All right, so with that, it is the recommendation by the Housing Authority Ad Hoc Review Committee and the Housing and Community Services Department that the Housing Authority, by resolutions, approve a conditional commitment of loan funds to Freebird Development Company, LLC, in the amount of $5.8 million for construction-related costs for the Bennett Valley Apartments project at 702 and 716 Bennett Valley Road, 921 and 927 Rutledge Avenue. Those are all the properties on the site. And to Midpen The Farm, Inc., in the amount of $2.9 million for acquisition-related costs for the Mahonia Glen project at 5173 Highway 12 in Santa Rosa. And with that, I would like to open it up to possibly the ad hoc committee if there's any comments about this review process and the initial point ranking system that we've used, and to the commissioners and the chair for any additional questions that I can help answer.
Thank you, Nicole. What I'd like to do is Vice Chair Test and Commissioner Olson were on the ad hoc committee, and if either one of you would like to present, before I do that, Megan, we tried to have somebody from City Council join this ad hoc, and I know many attempts were sent out to them to have them join the ad hoc. Can you provide some details as to how that didn't happen? We didn't have City Council.
That is correct. Following the March 2021 Housing Authority study session, where you provided direction to solicit city council member to participate. I reached out to the mayor, and we did not receive an appointment. But certainly, if that's the interest of the council, the housing authority going forward, we'll continue that process for future endeavors. But we were not able to get someone for this process.
Thank you for that background. Vice Chair Test, I'll let you start, and either you or Commissioner Olson can discuss the process and how you went through each deal in the scoring. What I'd like to do is, Nicole, if you could bring up, I don't know who has control of the screen right now. I think it's the first attachment, page 5 of 5, stratifies the readiness 10 of 10 points, and it goes into further detail. And that could be brought up on the screen. I think that would be beneficial to try and discuss the process and how each the projects were reviewed.
Yes, Chair Owen, I can bring that up for you. Give me just a moment.
Thank you.
Mark, I believe that's the last page of attachment 1.
Is this the correct page, Nicole?
I believe that is what we are looking for, yes.
Okay, let me see if I can make it more visible. Does that work for everyone? Is that too small?
That's good.
Can it be made a little bigger, please?
Those aren't binoculars, Jeff.
Is that okay, Commissioner Downey?
Yes,
My concern is that you can't see the full document, so I guess I can scroll down as needed. If you guys just need that, let me know.
Thank you. So yes, this is was included as attachment A to the NOFA. So this was made available to all of the developers before they applied. This is the detailed scoring sheet for each category. So just for an example, let's look at the top category for readiness, since it's easily visible on the screen. So to receive a score of between 7 and 10, the planning approvals, building permits can be issued following the award of funds. So that means that basically the project is already entitled and they just have to pay the fees to pull their permits. They've already gone through the planning process and the entitlement process with our Planning and Economic Development Department. To receive a score between 4 and 6, an application has been put in to the Planning and Economic Development Department, the acronym PED, and they are pending approval or currently under review, but not yet receiving the approvals for entitlements. And between a 0 and a 3 would be an applications for entitlement have not yet been submitted. Chair, did you want me to go through the rest of the categories as well?
No, that's fine. I think that's good as we go through, and I'll let Vice Chair Test take it from here, and she and Commissioner Olson can discuss. But I think this is good as we go through can explain the process that the subcategories that allow the projects for their scoring.
As you can see, staff and the ad hoc committee reviewed all of these different categories. There's 7 categories, and the reasoning behind this point scoring as shown on screen. A couple of things that were, there was so much information that didn't get in on all of the information that I think was important in these 2 projects for me is on the Bennett Valley project, the amount of on-site services was quite significant. And of course, there's a large percentage of units dedicated to the homeless or formerly homeless. Therefore, very deep level of affordability had to be included. And they include also a full-time clinical case manager, a full-time coordinator for services, and a program manager on site to provide resident services for the homeless individuals and families. So for me, that as well as the point ranking system was important. And then in terms of Mahonia Glen, the same situation. There's a number of units targeted to farm workers, and you don't see that type of funding available or coming to us on a very regular basis. And I felt that that was important, as well as the number of units. It's almost 100-unit apartment building. So those are my comments, and I'm sure there may be other comments too. Thank you.
Commissioner Olson, did you have any comments?
Only that the point ranking system, I think, is going to work real well. It's very precise, very clear, very precise. It should put to the side a lot of concern over exactly how things are worked out. So I think it's a real good system, and I think it'll be refined a little over the next year or two, but I think it's a long way toward getting this thing down to a real straightforward approach.
Okay, thank you. Megan and Nicole, as you went through the process and were evaluating the applicants, our last meeting we had the point system brought in and presented to us, and how it was going to be, how many points were, what categories, and then the stratification within those points that we have up on the screen. When you were going through this process, did you see any difference in the applications versus what you thought were going to happen? Because when we were discussing, what I want to go through is, we were looking at trying to match up something that would be have the visibility in terms of transparency for what's done, how they are evaluated, what the criteria are, and then what the city of Santa Rosa was looking for, special needs being important, and also service and amenities, as Vice Chair Test discussed. But as you look at these, and again, as Vice Chair Test brought up, the Bennett Valley Apartments did very well in terms of the amount of amenities brought on site, but as I understand it, it was scored 6 out of 10 potential points because it looked at what services were around the project. But if either of Nicole or Megan can discuss what your findings were as you're going through the process of scoring applicants versus putting the scoring system together initially.
And I'll defer to Nicole because she did the lion's share of the work on this. So Nicole, you would.
Sure. I think the number one, I guess, reaction to seeing the project applications come in was that with this being a larger NOFA, we received more applications than we were anticipating, with the $8.9 million potential for being just awarded out. As far as certain categories, I think it was planned for us to come back to the Housing Authority later this summer for a study session, again, to do a total debrief of the this inaugural point system, and to let the Housing Authority know how it goes, and maybe suggest some alternative categories or tightening down some of the categories so we don't get so many projects that rank so close together. And in your example on services and amenities, the Bennett Valley Senior Center, or the Bennett Valley project, received a 6 out of 10 because the categories that we look at to receive the highest number of points, and Mark, if you could scroll down just a little bit to the services and amenities portion. There we go. So in services and amenities, oh, there we go. So we're looking at, to score a 10 out of 10, the project would have needed to have been within half a mile of retail, transit, and grocery, and include on-site amenities. And so while the Bennett Valley Senior Center, or the Bennett Valley Apartments project has significant on-site services for the formerly homeless residents, as well as all of the rest of the residents, it was over that half a mile cutoff to grocery and retail. So that was the reason for the project not scoring as well. Those are definitely, things that we can take into consideration when we come back to the Housing Authority in the summer to decide if there's a better way to look at that category as well as the others to help more reflect the values and the direction that the Housing Authority wants to go in for the projects.
Okay, thank you. One of the things I noticed I thought was beneficial, and this is a discussion when we had how would this points were going to be put up. Whereas, and I bring this up almost every meeting, we have a 7-year wait list in terms of our voucher program to get on here. So we are very focused on being able to provide new units. But there's also the need to have units that are in place to remain in place. So rehab is also very important. So I want to reiterate that I appreciate that because I was not part of the ad hoc committee, I appreciate the efforts to go through to not just have straight scoring, because the 2 projects that were rehab, Parkwood Apartments and Digital Light, while neither one being recommended for approval for funding, it wasn't because their scores weren't as high. It was the aspect of taking it so that there was the 2 categories where it doesn't apply to them, readiness and also project competitiveness, because they're not going into the state for funding and how they would score there. Those were taken out, so it was a percentage of the amount of points available versus just the total points. Another thing I would like to go back and discuss is, as we were putting this point system together, as staff was putting it together, the special needs set for farm workers, large family, formerly homeless and disabled persons, and also seniors. So want to make sure that we discuss that those categories have the ability to receive more points versus straight just affordability with no added focus as to what tenant base or demographic you're trying to go for, that applicant is going for. So I wanted to be able to bring that to light and discuss that to make sure that the understanding of what is being looked at in the current in the current scoring mechanism. And as Nicole, as you brought up, we're going to have a study session on this to review the process and always have it be a refinement and always striving to be better in terms of we go through this, with the understanding that even as we do that, projects that will be close may not get funding approval on it because of how they scored. But to make it as transparent as possible and as objective as possible is always trying to be the goal in doing this. Do any other commissioners have comments on this? Commissioner Downey, do you have your hand raised? I don't know if it was for this or scrolling to see the site, but do you have any comments on this?
I'm sorry, Commissioner Downey, you are muted.
I'm sorry. I believe it was April, no, March, when Nicole introduced wanting to come up with a ranking system for applications. Within that presentation, I was hearing the word rubric. Now I'm seeing the word matrix. And my question is there different values placed in a matrix contrasted with a rubric? Or is this just what you came out with as a new vetting process? And then I have one more question.
Thank you, Commissioner Downey. For the purpose of this presentation, we use the terms rubric and scoring matrix interchangeably.
Thank you. And the second question I had was pertaining to the term conditional commitment of funds. Could you please elaborate on what is triggering the conditionality to insert the word conditional?
Sure, and that is our typical language that we insert in here. There are certain criteria that the developer will have to adhere to and documents that they need to provide to us after the Housing Authority action before we can execute loan documents. So we always preface these with this is a conditional commitment of loan funds provided that you complete X, Y, and Z. All of that is in the resolutions for the projects. For example, both of these projects have already, one of the projects has already completed their NEPA review, the other has not. So for example, the Mahonia Glen project, it would be conditioned on successfully completing a NEPA environmental assessment. So those are the types of things that make these conditional commitments.
And if you can indulge me with the third question, I'm so sorry. What is your strategy for two applications that score identically as far as who gets funding?
I'm sorry, you broke up a little bit. Can you repeat that question for me?
What is your strategy for two applications or more that score identically as far as who gets the funding?
So that actually did not come up during our review. There were no two projects that scored identically. I should say there are no two projects that received an identical total number of points or percentage of possible points.
So hypothetically going forward, if that scenario was to raise, what would be the process for taking one or the other, even though they're identically weighted?
If I may interject, this is Megan Bassinger, NOMA Director. I think that in future funding rounds, if we were to encounter projects that had identical scores or percentages of scores, that would be an example of a time we would reach out to the applicants and see if they were looking to refine their project any further in order to change their scores. And we would put all of those applicants on an equal footing and allow them the same opportunity. So we would definitely seek out additional information from the applicants if that were to occur.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Test, you had a question?
Just one more comment. I too would be looking forward to the next time we look into reviewing the scoring methodology. As far as rehab projects, Vigil Light actually only received 1 percentage point less than Mahonia Glen. So I felt that that aspect of using the 80% because of that actually worked. It was only 1% away from being funded.
Right, and to elaborate on that, thank you, Vice Chair Test. That is why we looked at all of the categories to make sure that they were equitable for each type of project application. For example, it's the third ranking project, the Vigil Lights project, which received the third rank and at 76%. That project actually received a raw score of 61 out of 80. So it is because we omitted those two categories that the project ranked third and not lower. So to me, that is proof that the omitting those two categories for the rehab and acquisition projects was the right call. It made one of the rehab projects very competitive for these funds. Ultimately, there were two different projects that best met the criteria set forth in the NOFA, though.
Do any other commissioners have any questions or comments? Megan, I would, this is brought up in the presentation, but we didn't do it verbally today, is is if you could address the situation of the timing of this meeting and why this meeting is set up as a special meeting and the purpose of why we're meeting today.
I'd be happy to answer that. So one of the interests that we have been trying to address in the past few years with our Focus NOFA, which became our recent practice in, I believe, 2019, is to align potential projects with state funding rounds. So either tax credit applications, SIDLAC, bond applications, or other competitive opportunities through HCD. And SIDLAC will be reviewing or receiving bond applications in May. Originally, the deadline was scheduled for May 13th, which is why we're meeting today. SIDLAC did extend the deadline to, I believe, the 25th. So there is another week of application period, but we are trying to align any potential projects so they could compete for the bond opportunities in May 2021. You're on mute, Jeff.
If we didn't have the meeting today, barring the week extension, and again, knowing that having the ability to leverage local funds to be able to be more competitive at the state level for either tax credits or tax exempt bonds or both, what would that do to a start of a project? I mean, when would they be able to go back again?
Unfortunately, I don't have the SIDLAC schedule off the top of my head, but they would need to wait for the next funding round. For example, TCAC receives applications for 9%, which is the highly competitive rounds, twice a year, and that's in February and in July. So in most recent rounds, we have seen most recent Focus NOFAs for the Housing Authority. We have taken action in June to allow a project to apply July 1st. If they were to miss that July 1st deadline, they would have to wait until February, which essentially would extend the project's timeline by a year. So similarly with the bonds, if they were to miss the deadline, it would prolong the timeline they have identified.
And what I've seen for these projects, it's usually 12 to maybe 16 months to build the project. So if it was on the shorter end of a year, that's 1 year that we wouldn't have units available.
Correct.
For new construction.
And our interest is trying to get as many units constructed as we can in the shortest time frame.
Okay. Thank you. Do any other commissioners have comments or questions? Okay, with that, I'll open it up for public comment.
We are now taking public comments on item number 3.1, fiscal year 2021-22, focused notice of funding availability, funding recommendation. If you wish to make a comment via Zoom, please raise your hand. If you're dialing in via telephone, please dial *9 to raise your hand. You will have 3 minutes to make your comment. A countdown timer will appear for the convenience of the speaker and viewers. The first speaker will be acknowledged and invited to speak. Please make sure to unmute yourself when you are invited to do so. Your microphone will be muted at the end of that countdown or at the conclusion of your comment. I do see some hands raised. Our first speaker is going to be Jim Wallen. Jim, I've enabled your speaking permissions. Can you confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I
Jim,
can hear you. Hello?
Thank you. Can you confirm that you can see the countdown timer?
Yes, I can.
Okay, your time will start now.
Good afternoon, everyone, commissioners and staff. Jim Wallen, Director of Development for PEP Housing. As you know, we are little Vigil Light Apartments is an application that we were looking at partnering with the city, and our concern is without the bedroom count, we would have scored in first place and been funded. The bedroom count is becoming an issue for senior projects because we cannot fund senior projects that are more than 1 bedroom. So in this situation, the senior projects are not being funded, which visual light is a project that is at risk, which should be a separate, almost different category because the regulatory agreement expires in a few years. Seniors are the fastest growing demographic in California and Sonoma County. We urge you to consider rescoring without the bedroom count because there is nothing we can do about the existing project. This project was built in 1983 and needs to be rehabbed. So please reconsider taking the top 2 and making it the top 3. We look forward to working with the city, but in the application, you know that there was a $1 million acquisition, and we look for the city to help us with that. So thank you very much, and let's really drill down on the bedroom count because it is something we need to look at with the senior population and the development.
Thank you, Jim. Our next speaker is going to be Devin Neary. Devin, I've enabled your speaking permissions. Can you please confirm that you can hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, thank you. Can you confirm that you can see the countdown timer?
Yes, I can.
Okay, your time starts now.
Thank you. Hi, my name is Devin Neary from Mid-Penn Housing's North Bay office in Santa Rosa. We just wanted to say we really appreciate the newly instituted scoring system for this fund. And we really want to thank staff and the Housing Authority for the lightning fast turnaround for these projects. Our project, Mahonia Glen, is a great opportunity to bring 99 units of affordable housing to Santa Rosa. The project is surrounded by excellent amenities. It will be energy efficient and will also provide transit enhancements as well. So it's a great project for the city. And this project is in a high resource area and is therefore very competitive to receive bonds and 4% tax credits. And these city funds are essential for the project to move forward to the state funding competition. So thank you so much to the Housing Authority for your work on this application process. We really appreciate it.
Thank you, Devin. I do have one more public comment. Our next speaker is going to be Robin Zimbler. Robin, I've enabled your speaking permissions. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can. Can you hear me?
I can. Can you confirm that you can see the countdown timer?
I can as well, yes.
Okay, your time will start now.
Sure. This is Robin Zimbler, the founder of Freebird Development. So I just wanted to take a quick 10 seconds to thank you as well on behalf of Freebird and Allied Housing with respect to Bennett Valley Apartments. This funding award is very timely. It'll enable us to compete for multiple funding sources at the state level. And we're excited to continue our partnership with the city on this project.
Okay, Chair Owen, at this time I do have one voicemail public comment that came in. It was from Mr. Dwayne DeWitt. I'm going to go ahead and play that now for the record. I'm sorry, it doesn't look like it's playing. Can you hear that? Okay, give me just one moment. I apologize. I'm gonna try to play it out loud on the computer here. It doesn't I'm sorry, I doesn't seem like it's actually playing here either. Chair Owen, is there a possibility that maybe we could have a transcript added of what the voicemail said to the record, just so we have some record?
Jeff Merck, what do you advise?
Do you mean to not publish it now, but afterwards, just so it's part of the record?
Yes.
Yeah, we can do that if there's no way that you can play it now.
Okay, I apologize. Thank you.
It's okay.
At this time, Chair Owen, I see no more hands raised, and we have not received any email public comments.
Okay, thank you. I'd like to go through and go through the one of the points that Jim Wallen made. And I understand the point that is, as we're going through this and we're working through the points categories and how things work, and we will review this going forward, I do see that whereas bedroom size would hurt a seniors projects because it's not normal that you would have seniors projects with multiple bedrooms. And that's a category for 10 points, but there's also a category for special needs, which seniors is a part of. And looking at the two projects that were approved, Bennett Valley Apartments goes for formerly homeless, so it scored high on that. And then Mahonia Glen is also working in for farm worker housing, so it scored high on those special needs as well. So is where Vigil Light, I'm sure, probably scored very high because of the seniors component aspect to it. And then we had an applicant for Hearns Veterans Village, which I think would probably score well on that. There is a bedroom side, and I honestly at this point in time don't know how we can address that situation. Megan, do you have any comments, or Nicole, on that category, on that point?
I would say at this point, for this funding opportunity, we have included bedroom size, but it certainly can be one of the items that we discuss in depth during the Housing Authority debrief on the point system. And Nicole and I can be prepared with some additional information on how bedroom sizes are evaluated in other funding opportunities such as TCAC or SIDLAC, in order to look to see if there's a way to create more equity in projects.
And as you know better than I, but the seniors projects have been funded in the past.
That is correct.
Can you address that situation?
Yes, certainly. As you may recall, in our CDBG DR round, which was the $38.5 million that the Housing Authority acted on in January of 2021, 2 of the 5 projects were seniors. And that's, I believe it's approximately a third of the units. And Nicole, certainly correct me if I'm far off base on that, but it was a significant percentage of the overall units that are designated for senior only. And we did, at the request of Petaluma Ecumenical Properties in the March Housing Authority study session, where we established this criteria going forward, we did include seniors as a special needs set aside.
Okay, thank you. Was there any discussion going through this, and Vice Chair Test, you could also chime in on this, as to, and I've seen this in other funding rounds, both at the Housing Authority for the City of Santa Rosa, as well as the state level for SIDLAC or TCAC, if there was any look at for what was requested versus and what was eventually awarded in terms of smaller dollar size, in terms of being able to spread the funds. Was that reviewed at all in this process?
Yes, I'd like to comment on that. Thank you. Yes, the top 2 projects, both Bennett Valley Apartments as well as Mahonia Glen, each reduced significantly from their original ask to the amounts that we have discussed today. Very significantly.
And if the Housing Authority would like specifics, Nicole can interject. I know Mahonia Glen's original request was $4 million, and as you can see, we are recommending 2.9. And then Bennett Valley Nicole, if you could chime in with what the original request was, but it also is a reduced award amount that we are recommending.
Sure, and yes, the Bennett Valley original request, I believe, was for about 6.9 million. So each project reduced the amount of funding that they could move forward with by about $1 million. Yeah, so $1.1 million in one case and $1 million in the other.
Thank you. I appreciated that was part of the process. Are there any comments from commissioners on these items before we I seek to move, or is there a motion on the resolution? And the first one being for Freebird Bennett Valley Apartments.
Commissioner Downey does have his hand raised.
Commissioner Downey?
My question is for Jeff Burke. If an applicant is being scored one way, and there's also a separate category for set-asides that could potentially compensate a deficit, could that potentially bring some challenges to the way that the scoring process works? And I just want to stipulate that this is a new baby, and I'm not wanting to poke holes in it, but I'm just curious from a legal standpoint if that could rear up for a potential applicant.
So I have not researched this issue, and I'm not familiar whether or not there's any case law, but my general understanding would be that if somebody were to challenge the decision of the housing authority, the test that a court would look to is whether there was a rational basis for the decision being made. And the fact that you have now a point system at least provides a little bit more. I mean, you know, I suppose, you know, as you've discussed correctly, I think that you're trying to get to a more objective standard. You know, I think that staff and the ad hoc committee have presented a sufficient rational basis for explaining how they came to their decision. And I hope the other folks who weren't selected, or other folks who may submit proposals going forward, they'll have an opportunity, you know, through the study session, and this can be further fine-tuned and try to make it a more perfect thing. And, you know, it maybe, you know, it will never be perfect, but I don't think that's the legal test. So I hope that answers your question.
All right, thank you, and thank you all for your hard work.
Thank you, Commissioner Downey. I'd like to just interject also and provide some additional context. The top two ranking projects, the Bennett Valley Apartments and Mahonia Glen, would have been in the first and second positions in the same order, regardless of the point scoring methodology of using percentages versus the raw score. So we would have been looking at these two top projects either way.
Chair Owen, I have found a way to play the previous voicemail public comment. Would you like me to go ahead and play that now for the record?
I'm seeing the city attorney shake his head yes, so yes, I would agree. Please go forward.
Okay.
Thank you, Mark.
Mm-hmm.
This comment is for the Maytown Housing Authority special meeting Monday, May 10th at 1 p.m. The agenda doesn't show how you can leave a vocal comment like this, so I'm running it through the city council. The item that is really important is right now, Roseland's rapid residential growth is overwhelming that neighborhood and its infrastructure. The city, looking at various commissions and boards, needs to come to grips with the fact you can't get more housing in there without totally overwhelming the population that's currently there currently exists and now has reached carrying capacity. So I'm glad that some new housing projects are coming forward and you're pushing them to Bennett Valley and that area finally out to the east instead of totally overwhelming the west. But you, as elected officials, owe to the electors, the residents, the taxpayers, to slow up the residential development in Roseland. You are overwhelming us, and it's not sustainable. We don't have the water, we don't have the food. Please become more reasonable in how you allow rapid residential growth. Doing it in the city center and the east side would help us all much better. Thank you.
Okay, so that was the voicemail public comment from Mr. Dwayne Dewitt.
Thank you, Mark. Not hearing any further discussion, is there a motion on the first resolution?
I'm sorry, I don't have the motion in front of me, so I can't help you.
The first resolution is the resolution of the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Rosa approving a conditional commitment of loan funds in the amount of $5.8 million to Freebird Development Company, LLC, for construction of related costs with the Bennett Valley Apartments located at 702 Bennett Valley Road in Santa Rosa, California.
Second that resolution.
Oh, I need someone to make a motion first, please.
I also, for some reason, have a problem getting it on screen, so I can't see it. Sorry.
Commissioner Downey?
I'll make a motion.
Thank you, Commissioner Downey. Is there a second?
I'll make a second.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Ask the clerk to conduct a roll call vote, please.
Okay, we'll go ahead and do the roll call vote. Let's start with Commissioner Downey. I'm sorry, Commissioner Downey, I couldn't hear you.
Aye.
And then Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Test.
Aye.
And Chair Owen.
Aye.
Okay, let the record show that the motion passes with 4 ayes and no noes, with Commissioner Burke abstaining.
Thank you. And then our next up is a resolution of the Housing Authority of the City of Santa Rosa approving a conditional commitment of loan funds in the amount of $2.9 million to Mid-Peninsula Farm for acquisition-related costs for Mahonia Glen, located at 5173 Highway 12 in Santa Rosa. Is there a motion for that resolution?
I'll make a motion for that we pass that resolution.
Thank you, Commissioner Olson. Is there a second?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you, Vice Chair Test. Clerk, can you please do a roll call vote?
Okay, we'll do a roll call vote on this resolution. And we will start with Commissioner Olson.
Aye.
And Commissioner Downey.
Aye.
And Vice Chair Test.
Aye.
And Chair Owen.
Aye.
Okay, let the record show that the motion passes with 4 ayes, no noes, with Commissioner Burke abstaining.
Thank you. And if, with Jeff Burke's permission, we don't have a normal director's commentary, but if it's possible, if we can get Megan to give an update of where we are with being able to add more commissioners to the Housing Authority, the status on that process. Is that okay, Jeff Burke?
Yes, I think it'll be okay.
Thank you.
As of this morning, the interviews for the Housing Authority commissioners are scheduled for the June 29th City Council meeting. So the city clerk should be contacting the applicants to schedule those interviews in the near future.
do you know what the timing interview to recommendations, appointments, and then 1 month, 2 months?
I think that the council is looking to act fairly quickly. So following the interviews, I am hoping that we'll have appointments coming out of that meeting or shortly thereafter.
Thank you very much. I appreciate that. We looked at expand our roles. We made it today with we only had the ability for 1 absentee, so it's good to be able to add, and we also want to be able to make sure we have tenant commissioners on the board. So Nicole, thank you very much for your work. I know this is a lot to go through. You did it exceptionally well with the new process, and Megan as well. You and your team is always doing a very good job. You know, we appreciate your help and your assistance in providing more housing in the city of Santa Rosa. So thank you very much. And with that, I'll adjourn the meeting.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone.